Well, good morning, church. It is good to be with you this day. I hope that you had a good night's rest and that I'll be able to keep you awake this morning. But it's been a treat to be here this weekend, and we've been excited about this, and it's been a blessing to us. Hope that it's been a blessing to you, and just grateful for this opportunity. Be opening your Bibles, if you will, to Psalm 23. Psalm 23. I think it's safe to say that Psalm 23 is the most well-known psalm of the 150 that we have in our Bibles. And it's probably the most beloved psalm as well. It is a psalm that we have heard throughout various times in our lives, on various occasions, whether it be in a sermon or it be used at a funeral service, or just generally in our Bible reading, that we turn to it for encouragement and upliftment, because we find such rich blessings in this psalm. And we're going to try to dig into it a little more deeply today so that we can see what David intended when he wrote this psalm. But I'd like to begin with a story that I heard one time about how a golden-tongued orator came into a certain city, and he was putting on a performance, and he was quoting many of the well-known speeches and poems throughout history. And he was doing a very eloquent job. And then he quoted Psalm 23 in a very outstanding manner. But after he finished, there was an older gentleman in the audience who raised his hand and just said, "Could I come and quote Psalm 23? And this man was a retired preacher, and he came up and he quoted Psalm 23, but it wasn't as eloquent. It wasn't the golden-tongued orator. It was kind of broken, a little choppy, but it was full of emotion. There was something different about it, to the point that the orator made the observation, "I knew the psalm, but this man knows the shepherd." And so I want us this morning not to just know the psalm, I want us to know the shepherd as well, and see the kind of shepherd that we have in our lives, who is watching over us, who is guiding us, who is directing us and taking care of us. And so we're going to begin by reading the psalm, and then we'll make some observations. We read, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever." I want us to notice in the first place this morning that the Lord is a personal shepherd. He is a personal shepherd. Go back and you look at the text and notice the pronouns that are used. My, I, me. You find 17 personal pronouns in the English translation, or at least from which I'm reading, the English Standard Version. 17 times you find personal pronouns that are used. David wants us to understand that the Lord isn't just our shepherd collectively. He is my shepherd individually. He knows me intimately. He cares about my life. He knows every detail about my life. It's like a father-child relationship where the parent knows everything about the child and cares and is involved and doesn't want to miss out on anything in that child's life. And our shepherd would know us as his sheep, and he cares about us so much. And these words are found in the present tense, which means he continues to be. He didn't just used to be. It wasn't just a one-time act. It is a continual act. He continues to be my shepherd. Consider some parallel passages. Psalm 139, verse 1. O Lord, you have searched me and known me. God has searched us. He knows us. He knows every detail about us. Now, that could be a little scary to think about, but it should be comforting to know that God knows what we're going through. He knows what we're facing. You know, sometimes we wonder if anyone understands how we feel, understands what we're going through, understands how difficult it might be, whatever it is we're dealing with. Well, God does. God knows, and he cares, and he is there. He searches us. He knows every detail. And he can tell when something isn't right. And so he searches us and he knows us. Luke 12:7. Why, even the hairs of your head are all numbered. Fear not, you are of more value than many sparrows. Now, the hairs on my head, maybe you can number. But you generally think of a full head of hair, that he knows every number of hair that you have. And he knows every detail, every single detail. You know, we can sometimes put on a face to other people and we act like everything's okay, when in reality, there's a lot going on. There's a lot that we're facing. And God knows that. God sees that. God cares about that. He's our personal shepherd. Jesus says in John 10:14, I am the good shepherd. I know my own, and my own know me. He knows us. He knows our name. He knows our life. He knows every detail about our lives. And he cares. I mean, it's something that is exciting to him. You think about, as a parent, when your children bring home something from school, a piece of artwork or just some homework or whatever, you as a parent, you are proud. You usually want to put it on the refrigerator or something like that to show it off because it's from your child. Now, it may be that in reality, what your child drew isn't comparable to Vincent van Gogh, okay? But to you it is, because it came from your child. And you love your child so much that you love what he or she has done. And you care so much, you're invested in that. And I know what that's like, having two children of my own. I care about what they are doing, what they are involved in, and I want to share in those experiences with them. And God shares our life together. And he cares about us so much. He is a personal shepherd. But I want us to note, secondly, not only is he a personal shepherd, he is a providing shepherd. You continue on in Psalm 1, or Psalm 23, verse 1, you see, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. I shall not want. Now, we stop and we think about that for just a moment, and we might think, well, there are some things that maybe we do want. So what is he saying here? I shall not want. Well, the word want in Hebrew is a word indicating to be lacking, to be needy. In general, it refers to a failure of something to be fully complete, to be whole, to be sufficient. And so the psalmist does not mean that God shepherds us by giving us everything that we desire. Rather, those who trust in God as sheep do in a shepherd will never lack for whatever they need. And I think that we understand the difference between a need and a want, or we should, but we sometimes confuse that, don't we? We have wants that we think that are a need in the moment. Something new comes out, something great comes out, and we think, I need that. And truth be told, we don't really need that. We want that. I could remember when I was 16, my daughter just turned 16, and I reflect on the time that I turned 16. What did I want to do? Drive. I wanted my freedom. And what did I want? A car. I needed a car. I needed a Mustang. That's what I needed. I didn't get a Mustang. And I blame y'all. I do. I got a Toyota Corolla, a 4-cylinder, that went from 0 to 60 in 4.2 minutes. But I took it 60 and above. I got stories I could tell, but my parents are here, so I won't. They know some of them, but they don't know all of them, and they won't. But there was a need. Both of my parents worked in getting me and my sister to school. There actually was a need for an additional vehicle and for me taking my sister and myself to school. But just because I wanted a Mustang, yeah, I did need a Mustang. And I think there's a good chance I may not be here today if I had a Mustang when I turned 16. I would have seen that as the sports car that it is and wanted to see how fast it goes. That's not a good thing. But we often confuse, and I still do, at 44 years of age. I know pretty soon they're going to announce the new iPhone. The iPhone 13, I suppose they'll call it. And there'll be a few upgrades, but they'll make it out as if they're major upgrades that you really need this in your life, that this is life-changing, life-altering, and of course they want to charge you $1,000 for the phone. And so they try to sell it as something that you need, but you don't. If you already have a working, functioning cell phone, that's something that we've gotten to a point where it's become almost a need. When years ago that would have purely been a want, but as our society has evolved, we are so dependent upon our phones, for better or for worse. But nonetheless, God makes sure that we have everything that we need, that we are not lacking in any way, that we are complete, that we are fully content, satisfied with what He provides. Let's think about some of these provisions. We think about sustenance in verse 2. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. And so what does He provide? He provides food for the sheep. The green pastures are rich. They are vibrant, beautiful, plentiful pastures where the sheep need not move from place to place to be satisfied. The green pastures took care of every single sheep so that they could eat and be fully fed. Be fully fed, that they would not be starving, they would not miss a meal, so to speak. They were well taken care of. And then He provides water, the quiet waters, where the sheep can drink without being rushed. They can take their time to quench their thirst. And we think about God. He provides. We hunger and thirst for righteousness, right? We hunger and thirst for righteousness. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be filled. We can have it. He provides it. And not only that, He provides rest, you see here in the sustenance. That's been one of the challenges the last couple of days, is that we eat first. And so we have our potluck fellowship at 5:30, and then we come in and we're fed and full, and it's time for the sermon. And I don't know about you, but very often after I eat, it's time for a nap. And so it's been my job to keep everybody awake. And I've tried. And hopefully I've been successful at that, but it's difficult to do because after we eat, we normally want to rest, and that's what the sheep are doing. But here's what's important, is that you think about as a sheep, you wouldn't be able to rest in peace unless you had someone watching over you and protecting you, because you had natural predators that were looking to prey upon you at any moment. So if you were to lie down and rest your head, you might be killed. You might have your life taken from you. And so it would be hard to rest peacefully. But yet these sheep are able to lie down and rest peacefully because the Lord is their shepherd. He also provides strength in verse 3. He restores my soul. The meaning here is to restore vitality, vigor, strength, to renew, invigorate. This statement seems to express the result of God's care as expressed in verse 2. And so we see that based upon what God's care is, the providing of the sustenance, they are revigorated, they are renewed, they are made strong again. And there's times in our lives that we need that shot in the arm, that we need that renewal of strength, because life is difficult and it can bring us down and we can get discouraged. We struggle with that at times, don't we? We struggle with discouragement. And we can feel that it's just so hard and feel discouraged and let down, and we need renewal. We need that vigor restored in our lives. And God provides that when we turn to Him as our shepherd. He restores our soul. And then we think about safety as another provision that He has for us. Continuing in verse 3. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. When the flock is on the move, the good shepherd looks for the proper paths that are beneficial for the flock, to make sure that He's taken the path that leads them in the direction that they should go, but that is the best path possible for them to make it. Now, that doesn't always mean, as we're going to see in just a moment, that path is without obstacles. But what it does mean is that path is the right path, and we can be assured of that. You know, there's a lot of times we think about needing directions. I know I had to rely upon my GPS to get me here from Sealy, Texas. And I had my GPS running, and it really wasn't a bad trip. I probably could have mapped it out ahead of time and made it on my own, but there were some times I had to be rerouted and so forth. But that GPS got me here safely. It led me in the way that I should go. I could remember many times before GPS trying to find my way to a certain place and getting lost, getting turned around, and not being able to find it because we think that we know the way. There's a way that seems right unto man, but the end thereof is death, we're told in Proverbs 14:12. And so many times we think that we know the way, and you know, we as men, we are known for not stopping to ask for directions, right? That we just persevere and we're going to make it. I still remember the time that I was asking my mom for directions, and she just said, "You just go." That was her response. You just go. She knew how to get there, but she didn't know the name of the road or something like that. And so I was like, well, that doesn't really help me out. Well, the shepherd goes before the sheep, and he leads them. He shows them the way. He doesn't just tell them the way. He shows them the way by walking the path ahead of them, leading them in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. But we also think about another provision that He has for us in verse 5, support. Support. In verse 5, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. The shepherd would examine the sheep as they entered the fold to be sure none of them was bruised, injured, or sick from eating a poisonous plant. To the hurts he provided and applied the soothing oil. And for the thirsty he had the large two-handled cup filled with water. He would also apply the oil to the head and horns of the sheep to help keep the flies and other insects away. He gave them the support that they needed. And there are many times that we do fall down that we do have bruises, cuts, and scrapes along the way. Well, he's there to support us, to help us, to take care of us. Yes, we have to face these. We have to go through these because that is life. And life can be difficult. But he is there to help us and take care of us. And then we think about the fifth provision that he has for us, and that is security in verse 6. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Where before there had been the threat of being hounded by enemies, now there is the awareness that nothing life can bring can separate him from the goodness that comes from God, nor from his loving mercy, his steadfast love. He's able to be with God for eternity. He's able to dwell in the house of the Lord forever. And he knew that goodness and mercy would follow him all the days of his life. And so the Lord is a providing shepherd. But now in the third place, I want us to consider that the Lord is a protecting shepherd. And for that, we specifically go to verse 4. And we see that even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. They comfort me. And so we are told that in life we will walk through the valley of the shadow of death. That we're going to go through trials and tribulations. We're not exempt from it. We're not above that. Every one of us, we're going to face difficulties. We're going to go through trials. It's not that once we become a Christian, we're free from all the problems of this world. Not at all. Now, we have the solution. We have an eternal home in heaven, and so we know the end result. But that doesn't mean that if we were to be diagnosed with cancer, that makes it easy. Or someone that we love is diagnosed with cancer, or is going through some difficulty, or that we've lost a loved one. You know, we walk through the valley of the shadow of death. Maybe you've lost your job. Maybe you've experienced rejection or financial ruin. Whatever it might be. There's so many different things that we can face that can be the shadow of death, the valley of the shadow of death for us. You know, this life of abundant care that was described in verses 2 and 3, we now see some of the trials and tribulations and a fearful threat in verse 4. And they would have to pass through that as they're walking through. And what's interesting is they're still walking on the path of righteousness. I want you to get that. The path of righteousness includes at times walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Because the way to get from point A to point B, to get from earth to heaven, isn't always the easy way. Isn't always free from problems and pain and suffering and trials and tribulations. No, along the way there can be difficulties. And God knows that. But God walks with us through those difficulties. And as we go through those difficulties, we can have that confidence and assurance like David, who said, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Because the shepherd was there. They're going through the valley of the shadow of death where the predators were abundant. They could fall off at any moment. So much could go wrong, and yet they're not afraid. The sheep isn't afraid because of the shepherd. And we wonder, how in the world can we have the peace that surpasses all understanding? Philippians 4. It's because of our shepherd. That peace that surpasses all understanding, we can have that no matter what we are facing, knowing that he is there with us. In this world, we will have tribulation, we're told in John 16:33. But we have nothing to fear as God is our shepherd. We see that God is our shepherd. We have, in the first place, his presence. You are with me. Our shepherd doesn't just lead us to the valley of the shadow of death. He walks through it as he has promised us. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Hebrews 13:5. We also see another reason that we have nothing to fear is because of his prevention. Your rod. The rod was a heavy instrument with which the shepherd could stun or kill an attacking beast. In Exodus 14:14, we read, "The Lord will fight for you, and you only have to be silent." You know, I remember sometimes as a kid, the joke is, my dad can beat up your dad. Well, we have God on our side. And if God be for us, you know the rest of it, don't you? Who can be against us? Romans 8:31. If God is on our side, we're going to win. We're going to be victorious. He's going to protect us. And so we see his prevention. We see, number 3, his preservation. Your rod and your staff. The staff was the shepherd's crook, which he used to assist the individual sheep that might fall down. I don't know if any of you recently saw a video that made its way around social media of a sheep that was stuck in a ditch. And this boy comes along, and I think he uses a belt or some instrument to get that sheep out. And it was a struggle to get it out, but he got it out. And immediately, the sheep begins to run off and leaps right back into the ditch. It was kind of funny, but it also just kind of showed how we like sheep do that so often. But our shepherd gets us out of that ditch. He delivers us because we are going to trip. We are going to stumble along the way. And we need someone to preserve us, to keep us on the straight and narrow, to bring us back so that we don't get off track. And then we see his peace. They comfort me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. The comfort these implements provide is the reassurance of guidance in correct paths to abundant food and water, and a protection by the shepherd from the dangers and enemies encountered on the way between areas of pasture. As the sheep trust the shepherd, so the psalmist encourages the reader to join in trusting God. And so we can experience his peace, trusting in him that he is going to take care of us. And so the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. We read about our shepherd, how that he is a personal shepherd. how that he is a providing shepherd, and how that he is a protecting shepherd. He loves us so much and he cares so much for us. But we've got to make sure as sheep that we follow him. He will lead us, he will guide us, he will direct us, he will take care of us, he will bless us, but we can always resist. We can always go astray. And we want to make sure that we continue to follow our shepherd. No one else, nothing else, but only him each step of the way. And so that concludes our study for this morning. Our first sermon that we'll be looking at in just a moment will be the great physician, the great physician. And so I look forward to studying that with you. But thank you for your kind attention this morning.